Ruthless Compassion is a podcast about people who've turned their emotional shit into fertilizer for success. It's about seeing our darkest moments as opportunities for growth and transformation. Raymond Van Gobel is Mr Rayz, a kids entertainer and educator with heart, on a mission to help kids find their courage and be brave. He also has managed bipolar affective disorder for over 22 years, and he has learned mental health strategies and ways to courageously battle mental illness with all its challenges. He was recently on the board of OBAD.ca, the Organization for Bipolar Affective Disorder, where he is part of a team of peer group support specialists in the leading mental health peer group in Alberta. Ray makes his home in Calgary and is a divorced single dad to 3 fast-growing kids currently in middle school and high school. Welcome, Ray Van Gobel, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
It's absolutely my pleasure. We talked a little while ago, and it's great to have you back on the show because I think what we're going to be talking about today is very, very important. So let's just, before we start, just remind the listener who you are and what you do.
Okay, my name is Ray Van Gobel. I work as Mr Rayz, a kids educator and entertainer based out of Calgary, Alberta. Right now I do a lot of virtual Zoom shows. I'm the new content producer for Kids Soda Channel and Vulcan Television. And I've just been really strong about sharing my story of mood disorders and my brain-based illness with bipolar disorder.
Alrighty, so yeah, and you were saying that recently you went through a difficult time. You want to share that with the listeners?
Yeah, so last time on our first interview, I was talking about children and mental health, and that was probably, I think, just before summertime. And I was just going really hard with my business, and my thing is I'm a high flyer, so I do more of the kind of getting high and kind of manic as opposed to being depressed. And so I've been able to manage this for the past 20 years, where if I'd get a little too high, I'd catch myself, be self-aware, and just be able to be normal and kind of not crash into depression too often. But this fall, I was just working so much, and I was putting in probably 50-hour weeks and just going and going. And I just got into a hypomanic state. And usually I'm able to catch myself, but just circumstances with family, COVID, pivoting a brand new business from being in person to being on screen, I just finally had enough of it by the time November came around. And so what happened was I ended up kind of crashing hard. There was effects to my family that happened afterwards that I'm still dealing with the consequences of. But when I got really sick, part of it was I have ADHD and bipolar disorder. And so there's a lot of overlap between symptoms and racing thoughts and stuff. And the problem with ADHD medication is if you have too much of it, it can spin you off into mania. So I was taking Adderall, just a small amount just to help me focus. And when I was a little too high, I thought to myself, I bet you if I have 2 Adderalls, it'll help me focus more.
Oh no.
And that was, I know, because a lot of people, they get diagnosed with depression, and then once they get an upper like Prozac or Adderall, they spin off into mania, and then they get diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So yeah, so I took 2 Adderall, and I was up all night, and my kids, I've been with them since my divorce for 7 years. Half a week every Sunday to Wednesday they're with me. And that night that I was super high, my girls were scared. No question about it. I was erratic. They were texting their mom all night to come and get them. And there's nothing worse than not being in control of your body. It's like being violated, because there was part of me that was saying, why am I talking so fast? Why am I not able to slow down? What's going on with me? And I was trying to do things to ground myself, but there's a point in your illness where you need medication, because it's a brain-based illness, and I just needed to get a tweak to get better. So, it it was a rough night. Actually, the police came to me twice to pick me up with the ambulance and everything. And first time they came, like I mentioned that like I've led peer support groups. I'm a facilitator for that, as well as I was on the board for OBAD. So I was helping direct this organization for bipolar affective disorder and how we would bring change to people and how we would help people. So I knew all the answers. And when the policeman came in, I was like, I'm Ray. It's 5 o'clock, Tuesday, December 11th. And I just gave them everything they needed and just held myself together until they left. And I was only committed the second time because my mentor, who's a family therapist, kept phoning to check in on me and to make sure that I was going to the hospital. And instead, the police said, okay, I think you seem kind of conscious of what you're doing. Why don't you go to sleep and we'll check on you in a couple hours. So the police leave and I knew they'd be coming back. And I was in this creative manic state. So I was like playing guitar and I was working on my songs. And I saw out of the window, like an hour later, blue and red flashing lights. So I turned all the lights in the house off and I headed under my desk. And the police came and they were just sitting in my parking spot, flashing their lights. And when they saw that everything was calm, they left 5 minutes later. And then I turned the lights on and I kept staying up all night doing my stuff. Oh. So I know. And it wasn't until they came the second time that I realized, I really need help. I need to go to the hospital. And I had a friend that was online in Zoom. And I had another friend that was just confirming who I was when the police came. And then, they took me to the hospital. And I got put into the holding cell room before they can put you into the psych ward. And I remember I was just starting to get a bit more lucid because the Adderall was wearing off, but I still knew I was sick and I was still pretty high. And I said, I don't have my medications. I'm not responsible for what happens tonight, but if I could get them, that would be great. And they were like, no, you'll be fine. So they put me into this holding cell and I went to sleep. I woke up the next day and I was super groggy. And I said, well, what happened last night? And they said, oh, well, you woke up and you were punching people out. You were punching and you were being really aggressive. And I totally don't remember any of that. But I do remember that they must have given me a shot of something to help me settle.
So when you asked for your medication, they should have listened to you, is basically what you're saying.
Totally. I was like, hello, I need my mood stabilizer. And, that's the first time. And I've had working with this mental illness for 20 years. And so this fall was the first time I had a break in 20 years. And where I was sick enough, I needed more help. So I knew that. Give me more medication. I need to sleep. If I don't sleep, things are not going to go well for myself.
So you said that you had learned some things about how to deal with this. So what kind of things did you learn from this experience? Because it sounds like a pretty hard experience to go through. So what was your learning?
Oh man, part of it was I've always, the first 8 years of me having bipolar disorder, what happens is you just don't believe it. You live in denial and people are telling you that you're still depressed and you're a little bit high and stuff. And you're like, I'm not sick. That's a terrible stigma. I don't want to have bipolar disorder. So I did not deal with it for the first while. And then when I met my peer support group, which is the OBAD, I found people that were like myself and that could relate to me. And, some were teachers, some were photographers, artists, executives in businesses. And I learned that you could just focus on your triggers and get well as get talk therapy. So the skills I had before I got really sick were the things that we talk about in peer support. I had a good med cocktail. So I worked with my psychiatrist to make sure that I had a mood stabilizer as well as an anti-anxiety, because those are the two things that push my buttons. And then I made sure I had a good diet. I made sure I did some mindfulness and prayer every day just to slow myself down. Exercise. It's so holistic. Gone are the days where you think you get one or two pills and that'll help solve everything. You just need to really be in track with who you are. So after I had this huge crash, I was there for like 3 weeks in the hospital. And then after that, when I came out, I had more intense therapy. And I realized that some of the stuff that happens, like I don't believe that bipolar disorder, well, I guess because there's nature versus nurture, but I just think people have a propensity for this. And then when a perfect storm comes of like psychological and emotional and mental crisis, that's when your brain can break. And so that's what happened with me. After I got out, I kept using the same skills before, being holistic. But I also learned there's a point where I need more medication now. The terrible thing about illnesses is that they get worse as you get older. So I've been pretty fortunate that in the past 20 years, this is my second hospitalization. But now I'm at the point now where, because of the therapy I've had, I've learned that when I get too high or too low, especially the high part, okay, I've done all of my self-care skills. I've tried to do yoga. I've tried to eat better. I've tried to take extra medication to sleep. I need something else. So now it's kind of neat because like usually I could go to like third and fourth gear and I figure I'm okay. Now when I go to third gear, I go, okay, wake up. If you're not able to look after yourself here, you should take your extra mood stabilizer. And I think that's been kind of the game changer.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you say that because, lately I've been doing a lot of independent psychiatric assessments. So these are these long form interviews to get a diagnosis and then make treatment recommendations with people. And we get toward the end of the interview, which is usually around an hour and a half or 2 hours long. It's a very lengthy process, going through everything. And then I say, okay, well, I'm going to make some recommendations about medication. And almost invariably, the person says, oh, I don't really like the idea of taking medication. And these are people who are quite significantly unwell, right? They're sent to me because they're very unwell and they need help. But they almost all try to refuse medication initially because they have all these ideas about it, right? That they're weak if they take it, or
Right.
they're going to get addicted to it, or they should be able to talk themselves out of their mental health problems,
Right.
all these things, right?
You know what happens is that we see this in group all the time, is that you have one really bad experience with meds and then you write all of them off. So you're sick, you show up at a group and they're like, my doctor tried to medicate to sedate me just to knock me out, because honestly, there's psychiatrists and there's doctors that are out there and I'm sure they're burnt out, but they would rather medicate to sedate and have someone, just kind of not live that full life than to have to tweak medications so that people can be like me and you're able to like function and have a quality of life where you're not flat. But I always encourage people, it's the med cocktail. And I'm like, if you can work with your psychiatrist and you can bring like a notepad with your mood graph and say, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm looking after myself. I find that people in your position will take the care of a patient more seriously because they're self-advocating and they're like, this is what I want to do to be well. And then I say, what's your window for therapeutic dose? So some medications, it's a month. Some of it's 2 weeks. I always put a buffer up where I say, okay, I'm in the middle of a med change. Doctor, I've got about a month. And then if it doesn't react according to the therapeutic dose of my body, maybe we could switch it up again. And sometimes, there's no hard set rule, as you know. So you can either get your medications and it'll be a nice solution within, a couple of weeks, or sometimes it takes years, and no one wants to hear that. But there's thousands of medications out there. And if you don't have medications, I tell people in group, it's like me trying to run up a hill with broken legs. You know, I can use my willpower as much as I can. I can eat healthy as I want. But unless I get that power assist from medication, I am not going to be able to use my willpower to walk up that hill. And so there's like, I said, we're trying to redefine the illness as a brain-based illness. So people know you need to have something to take the edge off and to give you the willpower to fix yourself.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that medication should not be sedating you so that you're just numb and flat all the time. Medication should enable you to have a quality of life and to live
Totally.
the life you're supposed to live. So if you're a creative person, it should enable you to be creative. If you're a passionate person, you should still have strong feelings. You should just be stable.
Yeah, totally. And you know, the other funny part, like I think when you asked me how I'm doing better this time around and what things I've learned, I have gotten to like deep therapy and like I don't know if it's not just mental illness. It's like I'm almost 50, man, and there's stuff that in the past 5 years I've just really come to deal with my family and stuff. So all of those internal things and working through my own trauma and childhood, I found that the bipolar just kind of amplified all those stories. So the story that I'm telling myself is like more askew because of my illness. So at times I'm like, okay, Ray, I think it's just, that cloud of depression that's seeping through all your stories. So you're making stuff up again. Oh, it's just, you need to deal with this part. So working with a good counselor and therapist for psychotherapy as well as the medication has been the game changer as well. I see someone every 2 weeks now. And before, I'd be leading peer groups and burning myself into the ground without talking about my own stuff. And isn't that the case, hey? I say that we just kind of want to help other people and then we just don't look after ourselves sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important for people who care for others, especially for others' mental health, that we have our own resources that we can turn to on a regular
Yeah.
basis for our own support. And even if we're like feeling fine all the time, like I speak to somebody once a month about, generally speaking, and I feel fine all the time, but I still speak to somebody once a month. I've been doing it forever because I just want to have a person that I can, run
Yeah.
things by and get support and just do some reality testing and, sometimes vent. And I just find it such an invaluable experience and I'm never going to stop. I'm going to until one of us drops dead, I'm not going to stop. And I don't do it because I'm in crisis. I don't do it because I'm quote unquote sick. I do it because it's part of my self-care. And, as
Wonderful.
a psychotherapist for many years, it's been just a wonderful thing. And even now, as mainly a consultant, it's still a wonderful thing to have somebody to talk to. And, I think having that kind of resource, even if you're like really okay, even if you're just really fine, if your life has stress and especially if you're taking care of people's mental health, I think it's absolutely invaluable to have somebody that you can talk to about your own mental health, because even if you have no quote unquote brain disorder, you still have stress, you still have
Absolutely.
crisis, you still have grief, you still have loss, you still have the crap of life, so why not have that support? And then that just gives you that extra edge above that other people might not have. So I totally recommend it. As a therapy practitioner, it would be very hypocritical of me to not pursue it myself, right?
Yeah, listen to her. This is great. I was going to say, just on talking about the thing with peer support, we always talk about sometimes therapists and doctors, like they know about the Ferrari and they've can fix the Ferrari, but they've never driven the Ferrari. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
It's like street smarts versus book smarts. And I think, that co-regulation that happens when you know someone that gets you. And it doesn't just have to be, mood disorders. It can be, AA or eating disorders and all that stuff. It's just finding someone that has that capacity for empathy and curiosity with you that can help you get through stuff. So that's, that's really cool. I'm so glad that you're safe and strong enough to keep recommending everybody. Just keep having someone in your corner to help you out.
Everybody should be in therapy, my personal feelings. In fact, the people who think they need it the least are probably the ones who should be in it the most, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who are probably really avoiding some stuff. And therapy keeps you honest. It makes you look at stuff that you don't want to look at. And the stuff that you don't want to look at is generally the stuff that you need to look at, all your shadowy stuff.
Totally.
And it can really set you free. Because when you look at that, you become more authentic and more honest with yourself and others, and your relationships become more intimate, and it just totally. Better.
It's funny, just kind of with me doing kind of music counseling, therapy stuff with kids all the time. I tell them that I'm an emotional jungle gym for kids. So I either ramp them up or I ramp them down. And one of the things I learned at a songwriting workshop was that you write the songs for when you need them. And like, I have been using music to help myself get better this whole time. And I wrote this sad song a while ago, and it's like, I'm sad, so sad. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay when you don't know what to say. And when it hurts like this, I can't resist telling someone, maybe my dad or mom, or just a friend, so that I don't have to pretend. Maybe just a friend, because I've had a bad day, you know? And I'm like, wrote this song last year during COVID, and I'm singing it to myself now going, yes, you know, it's letting your emotions out. And if not, like Brene Brown says, involuntary reaction. And there's no peace that comes, and especially because bipolar is such an emotional illness, you know, there's got to be a way to kind of amp that stuff up and down when you need to.
So you brought up a really interesting point, which is how, you know, you're using creativity as part of your healing, right? And I have always found that, you know, my 3 go-tos when I'm not feeling great is talking to my loved ones or to my therapist, talking about it. But the other 2 are creativity and exercise, right? Those 2 things are my like really big go-tos after talking about my feelings. And I love using exercise. I exercise every day. So every day I move some way, and some days I move in 3 different ways. Like I'll do yoga, I'll go for a walk, and I'll see my personal trainer on FaceTime now. But every day I exercise, and I love creativity. And for me, creativity is kind of like the panacea. So I was just wondering, like for someone like you who has a brain-based mental health disorder, how do you find creativity supports you? Or, you know, when you're in your darkest times, do you turn to your art?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword in some ways, because I find that when I'm high, the thing I've learned is my idea machine keeps going, right? So I have to kind of get some of the features of bipolar features that are negative out of the way in order for me to really focus on creativity as a pure healing medium, if that makes sense at all. So like I will sing, you know, slow songs, or I will like write and do poetry. And you know what else? Like art. Like I find that if I can look at a piece of art and stuff, like that piece of art of like the lake with a bunch of birds on it, that is how I feel. And I'm not able to express it with words. So I find it's just really powerful to look at stuff like that. But I will say though, being a high flyer, most of my creativity happens when I'm a little bit high. So I want to requalify that. What I'm saying is that I can manage right now kind of a very, very low hypomanic phase, where it's like people that would have bipolar 2, where you're energetic, you're productive, you're focused. Like a lot of lawyers and kind of, you know, Hollywood stars, maybe Puff Daddy and stuff, they're people that are functioning on that level with creativity. But whenever I get to a place where I have more than 3 racing thoughts, and when I just start to like get obsessed about something, I know that my creativity has gone too far. And I have friends, like you said, that will check in on me and say, hey Ray, you've been like talking about this one song for 3 days, what's up? You know? And it'll be like a mirror for me, where they'll say, Ray, you don't look well, what are you going to do about it? And it's the whole thing of, it stresses people out when they have to manage your illness. But as soon as someone can hold up a mirror and say, you know, Dad, you need to look after yourself, then I get it, and I'm able to like pull back. And then, you know, usually within half a day, I'm able to figure things out. Does that make sense at all? 'Cause it just
For sure.
with the creativity part, there's so many great features of it, but just making sure, like you said, to use it as a place of healing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you say, that, you know, that creativity can be kind of a double-edged sword, because you can really like fall down the rabbit hole with it, right? Like if you're in that hypomanic state, you can overdo it, and then it can become this vicious circle where you just want to do more and more and more, and it serves the mania, it doesn't serve the healing. So that's a very important point, I think, when you're dealing with bipolar illness, and I think it's not everyone is aware of that.
So you'll love this story then. So with my first illness, so I was like super sick, and I thought I was like writing the new book of the Bible for kids. And I ended up writing a bunch of poems, and I submitted some when I was really sick. So I got out of the hospital like probably 2 weeks later, and I get in the mail an envelope from Ripple Effect Press, and it says, "We have just shortlisted your poem, Brothers in Arms. Thank you for submitting it." And I totally don't even remember writing it. So,
Oh my.
I know, that's crazy because there's like moments of genius that happen, right? So I think that, like with any illness, I think there can find the good parts about it, and just when I'm firing on some of these features, it's fun to know, but better if I was able to write it while I was lucid. You know what I mean? Like, what? I got shortlisted. That is so weird. But
Just the other day, I diagnosed another person with bipolar 2 disorder, and it was a person in their 40s. And I was joking with them, but it wasn't really a joke because it's the truth. I was saying, I'm sort of the specialist of diagnosing people in their 40s with bipolar 2 because they have very mild cases. And so they never
Right.
get diagnosed because people aren't asking the right questions, right? Because they see their hypomanic states as positive. They're energetic, they're
Right.
creative, they don't get tired, they're productive, they can work long hours, they can
Yeah.
make more money, they're more sexual, so that's fun. Like
Yeah, until they super crash.
yeah, but they don't associate the crashes. They go, I'm doing great, I'm doing great. Oh, and now I'm depressed. I'm doing great, I'm doing great. Oh, now I'm depressed again.
Right.
They don't realize that what's going on is that they're bipolar, which means, two poles,
Right.
up and down. They don't
Yeah.
realize that the up phase is an unwell phase. And so all their doctors have been telling them, oh yeah, you have a severe depressive disorder, and they're getting treated with antidepressants and they're not getting better.
Right.
So I ask the questions, and then they get a proper diagnosis, and then they get put on the correct medications, and suddenly they start to become more stable. But it's hard, it's hard for people who have a mild version of the disorder to recognize
Absolutely.
that it is not okay to be up all night, cooking and writing and cleaning
Right.
and writing poetry, and it's not a positive thing because like you say, it's going to lead to a crash ultimately.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just giving you like a round of applause right now. How great that we need more people like you that actually will look beyond just someone being anxious and actually, oh, their anxiety is leading to being high. You know what I mean? Or just being a workaholic and able to discern that. Because you're right, like people don't realize that it's bipolar affective disorder. It's a spectrum. So sometimes it's like a cold, or sometimes it's like pneumonia. You know, and especially like you said,
Sometimes it's COVID.
But sometimes it's like the movers and shakers, right? That just and people that don't want to take medication because I don't want to be flat. You know what I mean? So they're like, no, I don't want to take that because I'll be flat. I won't be creative anymore. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I have a great psychiatrist, and we've worked it out where I'm not flat. So you don't have to be scared about losing your creativity, but yes, a lot of people are, or losing that edge, like you said, about being able to work and, in terms of hypersexuality. Like I was having sex with my wife, like ex-wife, for like a week straight, and she would be like, "Stop it," and you're like going, "Whoa, I'm having so much fun," right? And it's that fun addiction that can just be so dangerous, as and it just wrecks relationships as well as people. Like the three things that you deal with once you've come out of an episode and you like want to get well is like stress, anxiety, and shame. Like the shame part, because like with my first thing when I went well, I ended up like screaming at my friend in a restaurant saying that they were gonna have this kid and whatever, and she couldn't get pregnant, and I knew that somewhere in my heart, and so she's crying in the restaurant, and I'm just like, I kept going on about it, and I wouldn't stop because talking over people is a feature when you're high and you're bipolar. And then I got out of the hospital. I ran into them 2 years later, and the husband's like, "Sorry, Ray, you're out." And I'm like, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I was sick. I'm really ashamed that happened." But there's just this whole stuff of like relationships blowing up after you get sick, and it's just like going on a bender when you're drunk or when you're taking drugs. And for me, recently, because my girls are so scared, we're in therapy now, and they visit with me, like, a couple times a month, but they don't live with me right now. And that has been incredibly hard, being a great dad. That kind of one night just kind of cost me that. And I understand because they're like teenagers and they're younger. But the whole thing of trying to make it safe again for them and realize, oh, okay, yeah, I was really sick, And, Maria, like, I felt like an imposter for the past 6 months as Mr. Rayz, because I got out of the hospital. I had all these Christmas shows to do. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, how can I sing and look after, be fun with other kids when my own 2 daughters aren't living with me right now? Like, luckily my son, he loves it, so he's with me all the time. But yeah, there's a cost that happens when you crash. So that's what I use to tell them to get on medication and to see good psychotherapists like yourself and say you just need the proper support, because it is too costly to be sick with depression or with this bipolar stuff.
But there's a lot of myths, right? There's a lot of myths about medication, right? Medication will make me numb. Medication will make me feel flat. Medication will take away my creativity. Medication will, make me, lose touch with who I am. What can you say about that?
Again, I'm going to point to the whole model of peer support. Like with the hospitals, we have a thing now, especially, in Alberta, maybe across the world now, where you have like this recovery college, and one person that speaks is a doctor, and the other person that speaks and teaches is a peer support person. And so the doctor gives the peer support person a medication, whether they've got anxiety or bipolar stuff, and then we are the example that the medication works. So I would say that if you can get around people that medication has worked for them, we're the story of every good doctor that said you can do this without being without believing some of these lies. And again, I would say that you're gonna get probably your ass kicked for the first couple of times, because your body is adjusting to new medications that's not been on before. And when I had my second psychiatrist, I moved here from Vancouver, and I had this hotshot psychiatrist who will remain nameless that came just out of university. And he was like, I'm not going to read your chart. I'm just going to give you some medication. So I had a bunch of Mr. Rayz shows booked, and he gives me double my dose for my Seroquel anti-anxiety. It knocked me out for a day and a half. And then we just my ex-wife and I went to the office and talked to the whatever dean of psychiatry and said, this is unacceptable. This guy didn't even read my chart. He just gave me some drug without, asking the right questions and being, someone that would be an advocate for me. So all that to say, just make sure that your psychiatrist feels for you and that you have an empathetic, curious bond with each other, and that you're able to see that there's good medications that can come out of it with the right prescription and the right people.
Yeah, they have to listen and they have to pay attention.
Yeah, and I get it, because I think that it is scary when you wake up and you can't wake up, or you're sleeping for 9 hours because of a drug, or you don't feel anything in your heart for your wife or kids or friends because you're just numb. But I'm here to say that too shall pass, and you're going to just have to figure out what that medical cocktail is for you that works.
Yeah, because you don't sound numb to me.
Thanks. Oh man, I gotta tell you, I do that thing now with Mr. Rayz and the white line, and I've got this white line on my guitar, and I'm teaching kids that it's your duty to find courage and be brave with Mr. Rayz. And I bring up my moods all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying not to be numb or depressed, trying to be a bit happier. But yeah, all that stuff, it's just good medication and good psychotherapy. Those are the game changers.
And those are the things that a lot of people are afraid of. People are afraid to talk about themselves. They're afraid to reveal themselves. They're afraid to admit that they are talking to somebody, because there's still so much stigma. There's so much, negativity thrown at people who seek out mental health help, which is so unfortunate, because we all need it. We all need it. Living life is stressful. Even if you have nothing really wrong with you, living life
Yes.
is really stressful.
I know, yeah. It's funny because so like my whole thing is to break the stigma with kids and with this generation with bipolar disorder. And one of the best ways I describe this to kids is I tell my own, like, it's like having glasses for my brain. My medication is my glasses. And when I have the right prescription, I can think better, I can live better. And then I used to tell Micah, my son, that sometimes daddy's emotions get so big, I need to push him back into my heart. So my heart gets smaller, because my heart just kind of starts taking over my brain. I just start being very emotive. And I said that when you take medication, it's like putting pillows around your heart. And it helps you get slower, and it gets buffers it. And without medication, without good self-care routine and doctors, it's just not going to work. So, and it's been really good. Like so far, some parents have come up to me and said, "Hey, that's great that you shared that stuff because my kid has anxiety." And you probably get this all the time. As soon as we start talking about this stuff, everything's brought out into the light, and then everybody just starts talking and just being open. So, it's just so valuable that Ruthless Compassion is all about talking about mental health and ways that we can improve ourselves. So.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, Ruthless Compassion is all about facing the truth with kindness, so that's the whole philosophy. It's like seeing the truth about ourselves, other people, and the world. It's really facing the truth. But when you face the truth, so many people are afraid to face the truth because they immediately impose a judgment, right, on themselves, on others, on the world. And if you can face the truth without all that judgment, that's the Ruthless Compassion model, right? And that's why I say, like, we can let go of the stigma and we can just say, this is helpful, and we don't have to judge ourselves or each other for wanting to have more support.
Yes, you know what? That could be one of my new Mr Rayz songs. Ruthless Compassion, let's take some action. I can have you do some dabbing and some flossing and like, oh my gosh, I want to go to Toronto anyway, so any way you can get there, for sure. We could be like the therapist, dancer / musician, and we'll rock the world, man. Yeah, there's nothing more vulnerable for me than dancing because I'm just so awkward at it. So, oh man, Ruthless Compassion, take action. That's gonna work.
Yeah. No, it's really good to see the truth without all those imposed judgments, just to see it and to say, okay, this is how it is, right? Like, it's not somebody's fault. I'm constantly telling people, like, several times a week, it's not your fault that you developed a mental health condition. It's just, these things happen. Just like it's not your fault if you developed asthma or if you developed a heart disease. It's most of the time it's genetic, right?
Yeah.
So it's, right. If your genes want to go in that direction, it's not your fault. And life is stressful. And like you said, sometimes the stress of life can just knock you over the edge, and then you get physically ill or mentally ill. And people have to stop blaming themselves and shaming themselves and just start, loving themselves. And part of self-love is self-care.
That's right. I tell kids with brain-based illnesses, it's like Finding Nemo. So like he has that one little fin that's like kind of broken, and the other one that's good. And sometimes that perfect storm of life can hit that little broken fin that really can take a lot of damage than a regular fin that's fine. You know what I mean? So you're absolutely right. Especially with COVID, hey, like everything's come to light. For just a regular vanilla depression that everybody gets is all of a sudden like 10 different flavors. Everyone's really sad or anxious and stuff. So, and it's just funny how, like, even with our small groups, I find in COVID, with my 2 other people I can meet with, it just forces you to be even more open and vulnerable. So we've gotten really tight before the third stage happened with just the people that are in your pockets. So
yeah, absolutely, because everyone's going through this like crazy time, and because there's so much isolation and separation and so many in-person meetings, that we want to make our interactions more meaningful.
Yeah, unless you're in Alberta, because like right now it is the weirdest place ever, because I can come into a place with COVID Delta variant, not tell the teachers, not tell the kids, not tell the government, and like I can leave that preschool area with a bunch of sick kids. You know what I mean? Like,
I just heard that Alberta has double the rate of Ontario right now, but
we're not tracing it.
Yeah.
We're not tracing it. Like, that is the weirdest thing. So yeah, it's crazy. So
Yeah.
hey, if you're opening the doors to Ontario, let me come by there sometime, and I can take some residents, get out of crazy land here. But
Oh my goodness.
jeez, my goodness gracious.
So Ray, what are you up to these days in terms of like your shows and stuff? Like what's going on with you in terms of performing these days?
So right now, I'm actually the new content producer for a Soda Kids channel. So I've been working with Vulcan for the past year. So now I'm going to get some really great things out of there. And I'm doing a Super Saturday Kids Club every Saturday starting next week. And the really cool part is every second Saturday, we're going to talk about decolonization. And I have a friend who's part of the Blackfoot tribe. She's a fancy shawl dancer, just like a great spiritual grandmother. And she's going to share about the residential school system and how to have empathy and how the kids can like learn from it. And then I'm going to bring up some stuff about Indonesia and how we were under Dutch colony, and we were not able to play this instrument called the onklak for 100 years because the Dutch thought that this instrument was a call to war, which it was, but it was just like a little bamboo thing, and just how how we should have multiculturalism and empathy and diversity as Canadians. So Super Saturday Kids Club will start off. It's absolutely free, and it's a half-an-hour jam of me and a bunch of the best kids entertainers sharing stuff. So
That sounds wonderful. And where can
yeah.
people find you if they're interested in looking into, all about Ray Van Gobel?
Oh, I basically live on Instagram, so you can find me at Instagram at Mr Rayz, and it has all my links in the bio there.
So MrRayz.
Yes, on
Beautiful.
Instagram.
Terrific. And just before we leave, I always like to have my guests give a call to action to the listeners. So what would be your call to action today?
To find the courage to be brave and to share your bad day at the end of the day. Like, don't go to bed without touching in with someone, saying, whether it's a good day, but especially if you've had bad days, so you can get stuff out, maybe find some healing.
That's a nice one. Yeah, not to go to bed. Some people say don't go to bed mad, but maybe don't go to bed sad without sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or else it's like too much wine that night. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, I should talk to someone instead of going for that other bottle of wine. But
Yeah, I think that's a really good alternative.
it's way less expensive too, so that's a good thing. But,
Yeah, better for your liver.
and so good for your heart,
Yes.
Jeez.
For your physical heart and your emotional heart.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Ray Van Gobel. It's been a pleasure again talking with you, and very good words of wisdom and really good clarification. And I think when we have somebody who has weathered the storm themselves, you're much more credible authority on the topic than, like you say, somebody who doesn't know how to drive the Ferrari.
Thanks, Marcia. I just love that we were able to throw the word Ferrari into my podcast interview. Oh, I love your work that you're doing, and I can't wait till next time.
Alrighty, well, wonderful. We'll talk to you again then.
Okay, be well.
Bye. That was the delightful Ray Van Gobel, and I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. If you like this podcast, please review it wherever you listen, and you can sign up for my free bi-weekly wellness newsletter at marciasirotamd.com, where you'll also learn about my new online courses and my YouTube series on coping with COVID.